Good afternoon. Today I have lovely James P Sumner with me. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi. Thank you for having me on the show. So yeah, I'm James Sumner. I'm an indie author, and I've been for just over 8 years now. Predominantly, I write in the thriller genre, and I'm currently working on my 21st self-published novel. So,
Well, did you always want to be a writer?
I think, yeah, to be quite honest, I did. I used to love it as a kid without realizing it was what I wanted to do. And then just as I got a bit older, it was really the only thing that ever kind of made sense. And when you're sitting there at the desk 9 to 5 answering telephones, and I'd be just jotting down notes for potential characters and things like that. And it was like, do you know what? I'm wasting my time listening to customer complaints. This is what I should be doing. So I started doing it in my spare time. And when was it? I think it was 2016. I was able to actually start doing it full time, and pretty much have done ever since. So yeah, it's wicked. Oh, definitely fulfilling childhood dreams. As cliched as that sounds.
Yeah, why not? And what made you take the plunge and actually go for it and publish?
When I first started, I started doing it just for myself more than anything. And I got inspired by one particular book, which is called Lethal People by John Locke, who, it turns out that name is also a 16th century philosopher or something. It wasn't that one. It was the other guy. And it was really good. It was a bit different, and it wasn't perfect, but I did really enjoy it. And then, as you inevitably do, if you find a new author that you like, you kind of look into them a bit. And this was going back to 2013. 2013. And it turned out that John Locke was the first author to sell 1 million copies self-published with a Kindle. So I was like, before that, I just had it in my head. It's like, oh, you go to an agent, you're 1 in a million chance, then you're in the bookshelves, you got the films, etc. I didn't realize that you could actually publish yourself. And I was like, hang on a minute, I could do better than that. Or at least I thought I could. And that's what made me start writing. But I'm like, do you know what? I could do this myself. And I did. And I got it wrong a few times along the way. But I eventually kind of started to figure it out, and yeah, never looked back. So yeah, it's just the option was there, so you give it a go. And I've been learning the industry and how to publish and how to run a business almost as long as I've been figuring out how to write a book. So.
And are your books standalones, or are they a series?
They're series. So the way that I've tried to do it is I write 3 filler series. I try to make it so that each one is its own thing, but at the same time they do kind of share the same story world in a way. So the way that I've tried to structure it is kind of reminiscent of the Marvel movies. And like, you've got the Marvel universe of films that everyone knows, the Avengers and things like that. Being the comic book fan that I am, as you may have noticed from the Captain America t-shirt and his picture behind me, I try to do it so that whilst the series are kind of functioning on their own, they are actually all building towards something that will bring them together, and they have overlaps and things like that. So it's just a nice kind of little subplot to keep everyone interested. But yeah, the series themselves, I try and make them a contained story.
And who's your favourite character to write?
Probably my original one, which would be Adrian Hell. Just purely because I write that in the first person. So I'll like first person then present tense. So it's literally as I'm writing it, that's what's happening. So I like that. It's quite fun. I get to kind of live out my fantasy of being a hitman, and thinking about but it's putting yourself in that position. It's like, what would I do in this gunfight? I'm like, I'd probably cower behind the counter for a minute and figure a way out of there. So that's what he does, because that's what anyone would do. But sort of living it myself and sort of acting out the fight scenes as I'm writing them and stuff, it's just really good fun. I like that method of storytelling. And whilst my other series are probably a bit more traditional in the way that they're third person and multiple viewpoints and things like that, because this one's slightly different, or it's not as kind of normal, I suppose, in the genre. It's just a little bit more fun for me to do. So I do get engrossed in it.
And if you were to be transported as a character into any of your books, I guess that would be the one, yeah.
I mean, it would, but then at the same time, I know what I do to that guy, and I'm like, I don't want to go through that. Like, he gets the hell beat out, no pun intended. But yeah, probably would be. Again, just because it's so familiar, but I kind of feel like I've done those things as well, because I don't know, with him, I don't feel like I'm writing the book. I feel like I'm just kind of standing 2 feet behind him and just making notes about what he's doing. It's almost kind of like a journalist more than anything. And that's the kind of approach to the story. People ask me, do you know what's coming up? I'm like, I haven't got a clue what's going to happen next. It's like, it depends, whatever he does is what will happen, and then that's what I tell you. So it's more kind of like a journal of events than a novel in some ways. So yeah, it would be good to kind of physically walk a mile in his shoes, I suppose, even though I know what that mile's going to contain. Sarcasm and gunfights usually, but
what's been what's been your most fun scene to write, and what's been the most difficult?
The most difficult one's easier to answer. I mean, I try not to give away too many things about my books, but my 7th book, there was a very significant character death in there, and that was very difficult to write. I don't know, the people that read it hated me for, well, they still hate me for it, quite honestly, and that was 4 years ago. But at the same time, they were like, yeah, that was really good. Like the way, just the kind of the way that I envisioned it playing out, the way that I did it, I got a lot of praise for it. So I'm like, always nice, but it wasn't easy to do because it was such a long-standing character, and such a popular character as well. He was, I don't want to say sidekick, but he, a sort of a secondary character, but he'd grown popular with people kind of more so than I ever intended him to be. So when I got to the point in the story, I'm like, one of you needs to die and his name's on the cover, so it's you. Like, it wasn't easy to do. It was an emotional thing for me to do because I had a connection to the character as well. But yeah, that was definitely one of the most difficult. One of the most fun, that's it. There's been a few. There was, I'm just trying to think, there was one scene, it wasn't actually featuring Adrian Hell, but there was one scene where the bad guy in the book had one of his kind of little minions, and he had him by the ankles over the edge of a really tall building, and he was kind of interrogating him about missing money. And that was really good fun because I knew that he was going to drop him, and the guy dangling didn't, because that's how that was really good fun to write, because I think I used the phrase pancake at the end of it, which well, it was one that just kind of like dehumanized the whole thing and made you hate the bad guy, and it was like that was good fun. But yeah, I really enjoyed that, and there were scenes. What I did find fun, one of my more recent ones, which is actually the first book in my 3rd series, which is called Hard to Kill. The main character, when it wakes, you first see him when he wakes up from a coma. We don't know what's going on because neither does he, but he kind of has not flashbacks, but whilst he's asleep, he has sort of like prophetic kind of dreams that you associate to his subconscious battle with finding out who he is, and it was discovering his identity through these kind of nightmarish scenes of kind of walls of skulls and fire and things like that. And I quite enjoyed them because it was really kind of dark and almost supernatural in a way. And I've never written anything like that before. Like, I've written some dark things before, but it's always been rooted in reality. Whereas this was very much, this was like inside his head in the dream. So I could really just kind of let loose and do whatever I wanted, go full Stephen King in that. And that was actually really good fun. I enjoyed it. Just as something completely different.
They're telling us a lot about you and the way your mind works.
Yeah, I'm painting a real good picture of myself here, aren't I?
And what's the most interesting thing you found while doing research for your books?
Obviously, being in the UK, I don't have access to firearms. Whereas my character, being an assassin in America, has them in spades. I have to do a lot of research online for about that different handguns and things like that. But but I think it's one of the most interesting things. It's been how to use a sniper rifle in terms of when he's planning his shot. I want it to be realistic. So it's not just necessarily learning how the gun works and which guns do what. It was kind of the mathematics behind this bullet will fire this distance at this speed and it will do this, this, and this, and planning the angle of the shot. And it was like a trigonometry class from high school. I had all these diagrams with triangles and yeah, and I'm like, do I need to sign, what is it, SOHCAHTOA and the tangent and all that kind of stuff? And it was just figuring all that out. And then there was one particular scene, and it was actually at the end of my seventh book, the one with the death scene in it. And the particular shot was, I mean, it was physically and mathematically it was possible. Realistically, it was never going to happen, but then that's kind of the fun. There's an author friend of mine from the States. Her husband at the time was actually a sniper in the Marines. So I messaged him, and I was like, "Can I ask you this question?" And he called me, and he was on a video, like a sat phone, like in Basra or somewhere. And I'd met them previously, and he'd read my books, and he took them over, and his friends had read them, which was great. And I was like, "I want to do this shot with a sniper rifle." It's like, "Oh, right, well, this is how you do it." And he told me exactly how he would do it. Like, you turn the dial 3 notches. I'm like, remind me never to go off, but that's amazing. But just seeing how the mind works of like, this is physically how you would do it. This is what it would look like through the scope. I found it incredibly interesting, and it meant I could really kind of dig into that scene when it came to writing it, because I knew that as far-fetched as it might have sounded to the reader, it's like, that's exactly how it would have gone down. And I just thought that was brilliant. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. And terrifying.
I mean, scary as hell, but yeah. Like, that's the kind of knowledge that not everyone's comfortable having. Like, this is how it feels to use a sniper rifle. But yeah, it's really good, really interesting.
Do you have any fears or phobias, and would you write about them, or have you written about them?
I do and no, because I wouldn't. I mean, it's one of them things. I'm kind of, my fears are kind of typical. Like, I don't watch horror films or anything like that particularly. I don't like ghosts. I don't like big spiders. End of story. I think they're fairly typical ones, and it's like, I don't see any reason to put them in my books because I'd be terrified writing about it. I try and make all my characters as realistic as I can, so I give them like fears. Like my Adrian Hell is terrified of heights. That's again, it's a fairly common thing, but it just adds a dimension of realism to him, especially if he's up high taking his shot and he's like, "Oh my god, don't look down," kind of thing, and he's shaking because he's terrified, but he still has to do it. So I like that fear kind of brings out that human side of you and gives you another obstacle to overcome. I personally don't feel the need to overcome any obstacles in my career as a writer. I'm happy not writing about stuff that terrifies me, personally.
Yeah, which I think, to be honest, is the correct answer. But some people are like, "Oh, that's a good idea." No.
Yeah. I mean, if I was terrified of like Playboy models or something, then I would probably put that in the book. Like, oh yeah, they're terrifying with them bunny ears. Sadly not.
If anyone's terrified of Playboy models, then that's just weird. I don't get it.
To be honest, I mean, I said that, and I've just realised that was actually a scene in one of my books when somebody said that they were about to torture them, and they're like, "I'm going to make you face your worst fears," and the guy goes, "Oh well, in that case, I'm absolutely terrified of Playboy bunnies." It didn't go down well, but yeah, fun.
If you're able to pick out one moment so far since becoming an author as your favourite, what would it be? Or stand out, I suppose.
Yeah, there's been a couple. My main one was probably in 2015 when I entered my fifth novel into the Kindle Scout program, and it won, which was great. I don't even think the Kindle Scout program's a thing anymore, but the point of it was Amazon has like a bunch of their own imprints that are kind of similar to traditional ones like Thomas and Mercer, and I think Lakeside is another one. But there was one called Kindle Press, which was their kind of online only, not as big, but still pretty decent imprint. And if you won Kindle Scout, whatever book of yours won was published by them. So it was more similar to kind of a traditional publishing deal in a way. And my book won, which was great. And it won in the December. And then in the February, the book was published. And on release day, I went to number one, like literally in the world, which was awesome. I hit number one on the Amazon Kindle store in the US, the UK, Australia, and Canada. And I'm like, that's awesome. Now, admittedly, it was for about 6 hours. And then it dropped off and never got anywhere near it again because that's how it works. But for those 6 hours, I was literally the biggest selling author on the planet, and it was pretty cool. My little claim to fame. I've never got there again. I've never even come close again. But that's the difference between doing it yourself and having Amazon's multi-million-pound advertising budget and their algorithms in your favor. Sadly, it doesn't happen all that often. But yeah, that was definitely a proud moment. Just seeing, certainly seeing, like, obviously, like Lee Child is a big kind of influencer. People like seeing all the big names, and they were below me, and it was like, haha. And then they just kind of stayed there, and I just gradually went all the way down again. It's like, fair enough. Waving as I passed them on the way back down. But yeah, for 6 hours, I was king of the world, and it was amazing.
So what's your biggest dream? If you've already achieved number one in the world, then that's pretty cool. So what's next?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I've never kind of been one for a lavish lifestyle or anything like that. My goal was always to be, if I can do something that I love doing and make a comfortable living from it, you can't really ask for much more than that. Before I started writing, I had a CV resume, if you're in the US, it goes as long as my arm, with all the different call centers and things I'd done over the years. And like, I hated every second of that, and I barely got through. It's like, well, if I can earn enough where I don't have to check my bank balance every time I want to go to the shop, that'll do me. And if I can do it doing something that I enjoy, then even better. I don't need a fancy car or a yacht or anything. It's like, that'll do. So that's kind of the goal. I mean, I'm, touch wood, I've been able to do that. Obviously, the last kind of year and a half of the world pretty much rebooting itself was affected everybody. So, it's not always as easy as it used to be, and certainly not as easy as I would like, but I'm still hanging on, and I intend doing so for as many years as I can. As long as I can do that, whatever comes after it's a bonus, I think peaks way too early.
No, you didn't. You're fine. You've got another bestseller in you. You're fine.
Oh, I hope so.
If you're able to spend a day with any author, dead or alive, who would you like to spend a day with?
Oh, blimey. It's a tricky one, really, because I know we were kind of having a bit of a chat before the interview, and I said, like, since I started writing for a living, I don't actually read as much. Because I didn't have the enjoyment out of it. So because I was it was technical and not for fun. So I'm kind of a little bit out of touch with mainstream authors and different things. I think, in all honesty, I would probably want to sit down with Aaron Sorkin. Now, he's not technically fun, but he's one of the best screenplay writers of our generation. What I've learned from him watching shows like The West Wing, for example, the one that he made, Newsroom, like the way that he progresses a story only through dialogue is exactly the way that I write, and so I can relate to it. But the guy's a genius. He's incredibly intelligent and very talented. And if I could sit down, even for a couple of hours over a beer, and just pick that guy's brains, that would change the game for me, definitely.
What do you like to do when you're not writing?
Not a lot, if I'm being completely honest. I like to kind of my big thing is kind of escapism. Like my books are intended to be escapism for the reader, and when I'm not writing, I like to take myself off. As you can see, the big TV behind me. Like I like my films, I like my TV shows. I'm a gamer. I enjoy sort of chilling out with video games and things. It's just anything that kind of engages my mind, but at the same time just kind of makes me forget that there's something outside these four walls. I don't know, maybe it subconsciously feeds the creativity in me or something, but I've always needed that activity, that engagement. But yeah, anything kind of like that. I'm not a particularly outdoorsy kind of guy. I've had arthritis for too long to go walking and running or anything silly like that. So, so yeah, essentially, as I don't know, as indicative as it is of modern society, it's anything with a screen tends to help me relax. So that's my. It's not very exciting, but it keeps me happy and out of trouble.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Who was your first celebrity crush?
My first celebrity crush.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it was Sandra Bullock. It's the first one I can remember. I don't know why. I remember Sandra Bullock and I remember Mariah Carey for a time as well. Bear in mind, this was mid-90s when Mariah Carey kind of looked half decent and I was like 13. But yeah, I just remember Sandra Bullock standing out to me. I think it was when she did Speed with Keanu Reeves, the film, not anything else. But that was just the way that I sounded that and the way that I said that I something really bad. Yeah, I'm not commenting on her personal life. No, when she did the film with Keanu Reeves, like that was kind of her kind of big breakout role. And I remember seeing her like, hello. As a 15-year-old, you're like, hot woman driving a bus. Why do I like this? You know? but yeah, it's probably Sandra Bullock, I would say.
Yeah, she's pretty hot. One of my favourite films is Miss Congeniality. And yeah.
I actually really like that. That's a guilty pleasure. I love Miss Congeniality.
What is it with that film? I've seen it so many times and I love it. And I don't admit that.
I think it's because it's technically like a romantic comedy, but because the main character, who is female, is so kind of anti-romance, you can actually relate to it a little bit more. And it's like, yeah, do you know what? This is all right. I don't lose any man points watching this on my own.
Baby.
Yeah, and everybody watching this now, like, yeah, bloody do.
Yeah, no, I don't care either. I love it. Every time it's on, I'll watch it. I've seen it loads of times. But what superhero power would you choose if you could have one?
Oh God, there's 20 I could choose because, as you can probably guess from the Captain America T-shirt, I am a bit of a comic book nerd. I must admit, I would quite like Wolverine's superior healing. That especially, I mean, I'm approaching 40. My body's not in the shape that it used to be in when I was in my 20s. It's like if I could wake up one morning and just not have knackered knees and a bad back. If I could get out of a chair without making a noise to actually get me out of the chair, I would consider that a win. So yeah, Wolverine's superior healing would go down a treat right about now.
Yeah, I'm also approaching 40 and not a fan.
No, it's definitely not as good as 30 was.
No. And people really find it amusing that you're becoming close to 40 and like to mention it and laugh, which is just mean, I find. There's no need.
I also find the people that do that don't make it to 40 themselves, like conveniently.
Well, either that or they walk away with a bloody nose where I punched them in the face.
Yeah, mine tends to hobble away.
Yeah, whatever works, yeah.
It's when they're like, old people are mean. It's like, oh, you.
Yeah, don't mess with us. We have lots of years of anger. You don't really want to be unleashed.
So much experience.
Yeah. So are you working on anything at the moment and what's coming next?
Yeah, I've just this past week actually I've started on my next book, which is my 21st in total. It is as I was saying, all my series tend to try and overlap and have kind of like an overarching subplot. Well, I've got to the point where I'm now writing a book where all of my series come together to fight like to deal with the big issue. It's my version of the Avengers, I suppose. And I've just started writing that, and it's great. It's good fun. It's certainly something different, because I've never written anything kind of this scope before, and I've kind of likened it to the Game of Thrones books, because I did try reading them, but I tried reading them after I'd watched the show and was like, there's a show. I don't need all this. I don't need 15 chapters about a tree, like whatever it is. But the way that he writes it, in that every chapter is it's not even numbered, just whoever's the focus of that chapter. It's like I've kind of had to adopt that kind of style just to make sure that every series gets a fair share of the spotlight and the stories sort of grown at an even pace. And it's like I say, it's certainly something different, but I'm relishing the challenge. It's nice to still, after 8 years, be able to find new ways to kind of push yourself and improve. And so far it's going pretty well. So this whole planning books out thing that I've started doing is actually working quite well. So I know kind of where it's going, and it's a lot easier to actually draft it. So yeah, 1 week in, I'm still positive. I'm sure that'll change. A couple of weeks, I'll be banging my head against the wall and crying into my 19th cup of coffee, hating myself. As it inevitably happens when you hit that 25% mark of the manuscripts. But yeah, it's good. It's gone well so far. Can't say too much because it's hard to talk about new stuff without giving it all away. Or at least I find that. I'm like Tom Holland. If you ever watch an interview with him, he has another member of the Avengers with him to stop him giving all the plot away. I'm like that. So I just need to kind of plead the fifth a little bit, and I don't want to give too much, but no, it's certainly going to be epic. No doubt about
that. Awesome. Well, you may be relieved to know that I don't have any more questions for you, unless you can think of anything that I haven't asked you that you want to tell us.
To be honest, not really. It's one of them. I think it's weird because as a writer, like I'm essentially a career introvert. You know, it's like I'm hardwired to spend most of my time awake on my own, and I need to do that. But it means I'm not particularly good at certain things, like proactively talking about myself or bigging myself. I'm like the worst salesman in the world. You know, it's like everyone else will give you like the 10-second elevator pitch and blow your mind with their products, and I'm like, all right, I mean, read it if you want. I don't mind if you don't. It's fine, you know. It's like, and I wonder why I don't sell millions of copies. And it's like, eh. But yeah, it's not. I don't think it's something many authors are particularly good at. But I hope from your questions, I've been provided some entertaining answers at least.
Okay, so before we go, would you like to just remind everyone where they can get your books from and where they can find more about you if they wish?
Yeah, sure. I am present on social media, not as active on it as I would like, but if you go to my website, which is jamespsumner.com, you'll find links to all my books and links to all my social media and things for when I do post. Inevitably, memes about food tends to be my go-to. But I have my own bookstore on there because I did used to sell my books directly. More recently, I've moved the ebooks to be exclusive to Amazon, so obviously I'm not allowed to do that anymore. But I have links to the Amazon pages for all my books. Most of them are available in hardback and paperback as well. And there are store links to like Waterstones and places like that on there. So everything you need to find my books and to learn a little bit more about me is on my website, jamespsumner.com.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.